Perhaps the biggest mistake of your life was trying to prove your worth. He learned this in the quietest way possible. For a long time, he believed he needed to constantly show results, explain his ideas, defend his capability. But there's a hidden revelation here. Few understand this. When you try too hard to convince, you automatically place yourself below. The need for validation screams insecurity, even when there is strategic intelligence behind it. And the world feels that. When you try to convince, you lose position. He clearly remembers a meeting where he was practically ignored. Ideas interrupted, scattered glances. That typical atmosphere of people underestimating someone. The ego wanted to react, wanted to prove superiority right there. But he chose something different. Silent superiority. He didn't argue back, didn't insist, didn't beg for attention. He decided to let time be his ally, because delayed justice is often more powerful than immediate response. Months later, the results spoke for him. While they were seeking applause, he was seeking execution. While they were trying to appear competent, he was working on internal transformation. And here lies the emotional identification that might be touching you right now. Being underestimated is uncomfortable, but it's strategic. When no one expects much from you, you gain invisible freedom to surprise. And that opens an uncomfortable question. Could your desire for recognition be sabotaging your philosophical authority before the game even begins? There's a dangerous belief that almost everyone carries. If I don't show my value now, I'll be forgotten. But what if I told you that this urgency is exactly what weakens you? What if the fact that they're underestimating you isn't a problem, but a strategic advantage? Most people panic when they aren't recognized. The ego gets restless. The mind starts creating narratives. The need to prove something appears. But few understand this. When you rush to convince, you give up your position. When you try to look strong, you reveal insecurity. And when you fight for validation, you give up your silent superiority. Here's the counterintuitive part. Being underestimated gives you freedom. Freedom to fail without pressure. Freedom to learn without an audience. Freedom to build without interference. This is the hidden revelation that almost no one notices. While others compete for attention, you can develop strategic intelligence. While they compete for immediate applause, you work toward delayed justice. Maybe you've lived this. That meeting where your idea was ignored. That conversation where you were interrupted. That phase when no one really believed in you. It hurt, of course. But what if that moment wasn't a sign of weakness, but the beginning of an internal transformation? Today you'll understand why letting them underestimate you may be the smartest move of your life. And when you see the game as it really is, you'll realize you never needed to prove anything. You just needed to play better. Validation is dependence, disguised as self-esteem. It took him a while to admit that. But when he did, it was like one of those hidden revelations that change everything. Few understand this. When you need someone to recognize your worth, you're outsourcing your authority. And whoever outsources their own confidence loses silent superiority. It sounds harsh, I know. But it's liberating once you accept it. He likes to use the analogy of the stage. Whoever lives off applause needs an audience. And whoever needs an audience is never truly in control. Think about artists who fall into crisis when attention decreases. Their identity was tied to external recognition. In the professional world, it's the same. That colleague who talks too much in meetings is usually asking for validation, not contributing strategic intelligence. The strategy then is simple, but it requires internal transformation. Work while they're not looking. Invest in courses that expand your real competence, such as negotiation, finance, or strategic communication. Read works like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, or The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, not to seem cultured, but to strengthen your mental foundation. Because while some seek immediate applause, others build delayed justice. And this is where something even more powerful begins. The advantage of being unpredictable. Predictable people are easy to neutralize. He learned this by observing competitive environments, where repeating a pattern 2 or 3 times was enough for someone to know how to react. Few understand this, but excessive predictability eliminates silent superiority. When everyone knows exactly how you respond, you stop being strategic and become manageable, and whoever is manageable rarely surprises. He likes the analogy of chess. On the board, the beginner moves the pieces the same way every time, almost automatically. The experienced strategist uses strategic intelligence, changes rhythm, alters sequence, provokes miscalculation. Being underestimated in this context is a huge advantage. The opponent relaxes, lowers their guard, believes they've already understood your pattern. And that's exactly where delayed justice begins to take shape silently, almost invisibly. In practice, this means not revealing all your plans at work, not reacting the same way in every discussion, not handing over your strategy before the right moment. In negotiations, for example, speak less than you know and ask more than you answer. In conflicts, avoid showing all your emotional cards. This internal transformation requires discipline, controlling impulses, changing automatic patterns. And when you begin to master this art, you realize something even deeper. The greatest enemy of your strategy may never have been the other person, but your own ego. He usually says something that sounds simple, but almost no one applies. The ego is hungry for immediate response. It wants revenge, wants to prove it's right, wants to restore its image right away. Few understand this, but this urgency is exactly what destroys silent superiority. Strategic intelligence requires pause, and pause requires emotional maturity. And that's where true internal transformation begins. He lived through an emblematic situation. In an important negotiation, he was publicly provoked, almost challenged to react. The ego wanted to respond right there with sharp arguments, to impose philosophical authority by force. But he chose silence. It wasn't weakness. It was calculation. Days later, he presented concrete results that made any debate irrelevant. That's delayed justice, when time and facts speak louder than any impulsive response. Emotional control is invisible superiority. When you don't react, you observe. When you observe, you understand hidden patterns. And when you understand, you act with precision. In practice, this can mean waiting 24 hours before replying to a provocative email, avoiding heated public arguments, or simply going for a walk before making an important decision. It sounds simple, but it's profound. Because when you begin to master the ego, you realize there's still another level, using underestimation itself as a strategic tool. He learned that being underestimated is not an offense, it's a strategic asset. Few understand this, but when someone believes you're not a threat, they lower their guard. And when the guard is down, you gain space to act with strategic intelligence. Silent superiority is born exactly at that point, when you don't need to announce strength to possess it. It's a hidden revelation that completely changes the way you see conflicts. At work, for example, deliver results, not speeches. While some spend energy explaining what they intend to do, focus on execution. Take courses that increase your real competence, finance, data analysis, persuasive communication, and let the numbers speak. In negotiations, speak less than you know. Ask more. Well-placed silence creates productive discomfort. And often, it's in that space that the other person reveals more than they should. In personal conflicts, don't reveal your next steps. Don't threaten, don't announce change, simply change. If you want to improve your physical shape, don't post promises. Start training. If you want to grow professionally, don't share plans. Develop skills. This internal transformation requires invisible discipline, but it produces powerful delayed justice. And when you begin to operate this way, you notice something curious. While some are still laughing, you're already building something much bigger than they imagine. He likes the iceberg analogy. What people see is only the tip, small, visible, almost ordinary. But few understand this. The real strength lies in the submerged part. Silent superiority works exactly like that. While many announce goals, publicize plans, and display intentions, those who act with strategic intelligence are investing in the invisible foundation. And this is a hidden revelation that completely transforms the game. Invisible construction requires discipline without an audience. He himself spent years studying human behavior, finance, and negotiation without posting a single achievement. He read authors like Sun Tzu and Napoleon Hill not to seem profound, but to strengthen his mental structure. He invested in consistent assets instead of seeking immediate status. This internal transformation doesn't generate applause at first, but it prepares the ground for delayed justice, the kind that arrives when results become impossible to ignore. There's a strong emotional identification here. It hurts to see people laughing or underestimating you. But while they laugh at you, you build. While they doubt, you train. While they ignore, you learn. This is the philosophical authority that few truly apply. And when that invisible foundation begins to support concrete results, something interesting happens. You realize you don't need to prove anything anymore. Just act at the right moment. He realized that everything begins with 3 simple but rare decisions. Don't react, don't prove, don't over-explain. It sounds basic, almost obvious, but few understand this in practice. Most still believe they need to defend their image all the time. But true silent superiority is born when you don't accept every invitation to confrontation. And that requires strategic intelligence, not wounded pride. Not reacting is not passivity. It's calculation. Not proving is not weakness. It's structural confidence. Not over-explaining is not arrogance, it's clarity of position. There's a hidden revelation here. The less you seek validation, the more philosophical authority you transmit. Because whoever knows their worth doesn't need to shout their price. And when you internalize this, you begin a deep internal transformation, almost imperceptible to others, but extremely powerful for you. Underestimation is strategic freedom. When no one expects anything from you, you gain room to fail, test, adjust, and surprise. That's delayed justice operating at the right time. And maybe the question now isn't, how do I prove my worth? But rather, am I prepared to use silence as a tool of power? Because the game continues. And it completely changes when you stop wanting to be seen and start wanting to be effective. Now let me ask you an honest question. How many decisions in your life were made to prove something to someone? How many times did you react just to protect your ego and not to protect your strategy? If you truly understood what was said here, then you've already realized silent superiority isn't about pride, it's about positioning. Strategic intelligence isn't coldness, it's maturity. And delayed justice doesn't fail, it just requires patience. Few understand this, but now you do. So here's the challenge. The next time they underestimate you, will you react or will you observe? Will you try to convince, or will you build in silence? Will you seek applause, or will you invest in your internal transformation? Because in the end, true philosophical authority isn't recognized in the noise. It is revealed in the result. If this content changed the way you see the game, if this hidden revelation made sense to you, then leave your like. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because here we don't talk about empty motivation, we talk about real strategy. And in the next video, we'll go even deeper. The power of speaking less and controlling more. Are you ready to play at the level where few have the courage to enter?